Hello, world. It's me, your host, Nate, here on this cloudy Monday evening. I'm kind of enjoying the weather. It's not too cold. The wind is a little too much, but I just need a little bit of sun, just a touch of sun to make me feel like it's a new day. But other than that, today we have a special guest, Mr. Should I call you DB
Yep,
or
DB.
DB? DB Marshall. He is a um, author. My mind is more blank. An author, a radio personality, public speaker, inspirational speaker, life coach, all those things that will equal to you getting your life back on track. He also wrote a book that we're going to talk about a little bit later. But I want to start off with saying first, hello, how you doing, sir?
Greetings. How are you?
I'm doing great. I'm doing great. For some reason, I just keep getting authors in my space. So I guess it's something that I need to learn, something that needs to
Mm,
be done. So today we're going to talk a little bit about your book, a little bit about who you are, and your pursuits in life, if you will.
awesome,
Um,
awesome.
so today's topic is kind of connected to what DB does. And I wanted to go over just love languages. I'm not going to go into the official definition of it, but simply put, how do you express love? How do you show love? How do you receive love? And what is your language compared to the people around you? Are y'all on the same page? Do y'all consistently butt heads, or is there an even playing field? Do you find yourself being misunderstood a lot? How are you sharing that? And it's kind of the love language, kind of from a different perspective. And I wanted to, well, for the last couple of weeks, I've been having conversations with various people, whether it be professional, business, personal, love that's come back from out of the blue because they bored in the quarantine, all over the board. And I've been adjusting how I communicate with people. So one, I listen a little bit better than I probably did before all of this, in terms of the pandemic, and I hear differently. And I'm practicing, especially if it's a confrontation or some type of, not necessarily an argument. I haven't had any major arguments other than UPS, USPS, Amazon, customer service type of stuff. But that's the side. I think we all had those throughout this. But I've just learned, or I'm understanding more how to communicate, and how communication or your love language kind of plays a part in having a smooth journey or having a bumpy journey. There's always going to be a couple forks in the road, a couple obstacles, but sometimes our ability to listen and communicate, and our ability to speak our truth, is sometimes the thing that, most times, is the thing that I have found personally in my own experience, that gets us into a little bit of a trouble spot. So I wanted to just throw that question out there to you all that's listening. What is your love language? Is it easy for you to communicate? Is it difficulty? Is there a difficult nature that you have in being understood? Are you the person that is always fighting for understanding in people, or do you have it together? Because we have the other extreme, people who communicate very well. They're very effective at giving you their feelings, but often that person sometimes may not be good at listening. And this all stemmed from the great Will Smith, not putting him on a higher than thou pedestal, but it really amazed me, just looking at his journey as he's been more active on social media, all the way up to this latest piece of content that he threw out at us, and his communication with Janet Hubert, um, the actress, dancer, singer, mom, Janet Hubert, and him extending an olive branch, saying what I did wrong, but ultimately learning how to forgive himself for his part in the issue, and just listening to her. we got the 30th anniversary of Fresh Prince of Bel-Air, and we saw the sit-down conversation with the two of them. But Will Smith took it a step further and took the uncut version of their conversation and brought it to Jada Pinkett's Red Table Talk. So we got to see what really was said and how emotions really was ran high. Because on the special, we saw kind of a cut and paste of the conversation that was the initial them getting together, and then you see them embrace at the end. But the middle conversation is what I was after, that love language, that how do we forgive? How do we let go? How do we move on? And that just inspired this conversation that I'm having today with DB. And for me, just the last week and a half, how I've been communicating differently after seeing that clip and after watching both of the series go on. But I'm gonna throw this over to Mr. DB and ask him, did you see either of the clips, the Red Table Talk or the anniversary special?
Yeah, I didn't see the anniversary special, but I was able to see a few of the clips, and I was taken aback by it and also joyful. The first time, I don't watch a lot of the pop culture type stuff in the news as much, but I do remember looking at a show on BET when they interviewed her, and she kind of gave her perspective on what happened with her and Will Smith, how she was treated, and the things that impacted her. But I didn't know to what extent, because they filmed that like years and years ago. And so when she came back and said, look, you pretty much kind of blackballed my career, you kind of ruined my career, my mouth dropped.
But it also went a step further, and I was really glad that she got her full story out, because we've seen a lot of those clips and it's almost felt like we've been a part of it. What I found most important, not even their personal conflict, but what she was personally going on in what was going on with her in her personal life. She was in an abusive relationship. That third season that she was on of Fresh Prince, she was pregnant. So we saw her pregnant on the show, but she was pregnant in real life. And then she was in an abusive relationship. So all of those things, and Will Smith saying he made it difficult for her, knowingly made it difficult for her on that set. So all of those things coming together, almost 27 years later, I would understand why somebody would be so frustrated and so, venomous in their conversation and their dialogue and their reactions. The worst thing she could have done was to sign on to do a live, because she hadn't healed. But you saw a different person come out once and for me, it was once she was heard. I think the acknowledgement that I acknowledge, not even that I'm sorry or please forgive me, but I think that the idea of her being heard, you saw a different person. She touched him, so she was getting in his space. You saw a smile on her face that we have not seen from her on social media forever. I don't remember seeing it. But how does that tie into, in your opinion, how can we use that as a kind of a platform in our personal lives? I know we're not rich people problems, they came together on TV, but how can we apply some of those ideals into our own personal life, in your opinion?
Yeah, I always tell people closure is paramount. It is paramount. If there is someone that has done you wrong, if you have done someone else wrong, and they're still living, make it happen, settle it. Just settle it. And oftentimes when we have these conflicts, we walk away and we never talk about it, and we internalize it. And we make the story when the story that we're making up is even half the times not the story. Right. So then we start having internal conflict. And when you start having an internal conflict, that's when you start self-sabotaging. And so what I liked about that is they were able to come together, still living. It's the same concept. Give people their flowers while they're living. And to me, that was just as precious as getting 36 dozen of roses, because it allows you to understand and move forward. But then there's a time when you cannot have that conversation with that person, right? They don't want to talk to you. They have
Yeah.
past and going on. Then you have to learn how to resolve that within yourself. And
Mm.
so you're not going to get the answers that you want, but you still have the power and the opportunity to close that chapter if you really want to.
And I'm sure even after watching the Red Table Talk, which I would suggest if you haven't seen it, watch it, because it just gives a little bit more insight. I wish the two of them would have sit down together on that platform and had a conversation, because his therapist was there. So we got to see an even more vulnerable Will Smith in that space. But I wish she was able to, so the closure could have been even more impactful to the viewers, the people who have been invested in this beef, so to speak, for so many years. And it really just showed me the capacity that we have to let things go. If you could see something 27 years and you can see how it has affected both of them, because he probably has lived with the guilt. I don't know, but hopefully he's lived with that guilt as long as she's dealt with the actual pain and the reaction of what he has done, and the people around him aided to. But for me, how we love, and I keep using the word love because love can mean so many different things to so many people, but how we show love, how we express love, how we, in hurt situations, how we give love, even in that space, is really important to me as I grow older, because there's a lot of bridges that I need to repair, going through, because I being in the arts, I've been labeled difficult because I wanted certain things from me. And most times people label you as difficult when they can't control you, or they can't get out of you what they need from themselves. And it's almost a selfishness. I'm not saying there's not real difficult people out there, but often, as Janet Hubert said, it's the kiss of death, especially for Black people, Black women. When you give them that label, that gives everybody else permission to treat them a certain way or deal with them or not in a certain way. And it was really just impactful just watching that. It was really inspirational to me. I mean, I watched the Real Table Talk twice because I just wanted to hear what it felt like to have closure from the other side. Somebody who has been disrespectful to somebody or did something wrong to someone. What does closure look like on that side? You know, does it relieve you? Does it make you want to give more to that person or that situation? Or does it just, help you to move forward with a clear conscience? So it was just really impactful. And if you have not seen either of them, I suggest you watch them just for that value, and support, Black content and Black media. But definitely, if you're having trouble forgiving someone, or even being forgiven, because the struggle in being forgiven is often you don't accept what you've done as wrong, or you haven't dealt with it. And we see that relationship played out with Oprah and Monique and Tyler and that side of it. So we see what is possible on that level, but I'm waiting for that to inspire. I'm surprised Iyanla hasn't put Oprah in a chokehold by now and forced this out of her. But people have to do this in their own time on both sides, to be forgive and to take forgiveness. And just remember, forgiveness is not often for the other person. It can help that person if they in a destructive pattern that's harming them and other people. But forgiveness is really for you to be able to move forward, and not temporarily, but to really let go and release is for you. But I'm gonna let the real life coach take over for a moment and tell me a little bit about himself, and what brought you to this point in life that you're in right now.
Well, my name is DB Marshall. I am many things. I wear many hats. Let me start off with that and giving you some background. I was raised by a single mom. Dad was still in my life. I had a great upbringing, a great father, great mother, was completely supportive all of my life. Yes, I grew up in the hood, and were poor, well, not poor, but then I know we were poor until I got to high school. But with that said, I went through life, raising my siblings because my mom was a single parent. At 14, I started working at Burger King. I was part of the household income, making sure my siblings had in the whole 9 yards. And so I really didn't start experiencing hurt until young adulthood, when I started dating. And that's when things got chaotic for me. And when I entered the dating world, or even social or society, the social world, there was a lot of things that I wasn't accustomed to. I didn't know what manipulating was. I didn't know what lying was. I didn't know what any of that was, because we were raised to just always be yourself, be honest, and love other to death, love on your siblings to death. So I entered the world doing that. And so I am love-based. I love loving. Everything about me is loving. I love being in love. I love everything about just love. But with that said, currently in my life, I'm working on my doctorate degree. I am a life coach, a wellness coach. In addition to that, I do provide therapeutic services for the elderly community on the weekends and Monday through Friday. Of course, I have a full-time job until my business kind of kick off the way I needed to kick off. And I'm a kidney ambassador. I'm a kidney patient and a kidney ambassador. So I was diagnosed with chronic kidney disease, about 8 years ago, roughly 8 years ago. And I became an ambassador about 2 years ago. So I worked with Couser Permanente. I sit on a committee. I also work with a lot of pharmaceutical companies, in addition to working with Emory University.
In terms, so you are psychology, are those what your two masters in undergrad career was?
So no, actually, I started off in education, early childhood education, and hated being in the classroom.
And he ran you out to the classroom. Okay, I get it.
And so then I went back and said, hey, what I'm going to do. So then I got my bachelor's and master's degree in social work. And so now I'm getting my PhD in social work. So I'm in the realm of clinical social work.
Was that based on your experience putting you in that field, or being in a classroom? Because that could definitely, especially in today's world, bring up a lot of social disorders and such.
Yeah, so when I entered the classroom, I became almost claustrophobic, just standing in those four walls. It drove me crazy. And I'm one of those individuals. I'm very athletic. I like to move around. I run marathons. I'm always multitasking.
But it is nothing like a child that will bring you to what grade did you teach?
I started out with pre-K, then from pre-K to kindergarten.
Wow.
And that was my motivator to kind of get out and do something else. And I was like, what am I going to do? I thought about communication and all. I was like, no. Then I heard about social work, and I was like, oh, I did this all my life. My mom done this all my life. So I think I would be a good fit. And that's how I ended up in it.
So now being on this, well, you're still on the academic side of it, in terms of, because I'm quite sure you do life coaching, correct? How has that been beneficial to you? Before you talk about the benefits for people to get it, but how has it been beneficial to you?
Life coaching, receiving services and also giving service has been awesome. And so I know there's this huge stigma about help in the Black community as it relates to emotional wellness, mental wellness, not so much as physical wellness. I think we're kind of open to needing help physically, especially from any type of physical therapist in the medical community. But once I start understanding the emotional impact that I had and others had on their lives, I became more curious about how can I be a universal servant.
So can you tell me the difference between life coaching, counseling, and then clinical therapy? What's the difference in it?
So
because most people think you all do
the same thing.
The same thing as the same type of communication.
No. So for much life coaching oftentimes have to do with the present. Who I am, what are these issues or barriers that I'm running into you, and how can you get me unstuck? So when we go into the psychology aspect of it, then we start dealing, or the clinical aspect, then we start dealing with your past. So we start dealing with trauma, and how trauma has impacted your life. So we get a lot of background information. How is your relationship with mom and dad? How is your relationship with your ex? And try to pinpoint on at what part or stage in your life did you start to change and start really behaving in a way that you don't necessarily care about or care for. Then we have the psychiatry Basically is everything that we kind of just talked about, but they have the authority to prescribe medications. And you
So
usually
is
they
that the big difference?
Mm-hmm.
Okay. So what do you see yourself? Will you be more on the psychiatrist side, or will you continue with the life coaching or therapy?
No, I probably would not be going to the psychiatrist. I'm probably going to stick with the life coaching.
Mm-hmm.
And the reason I love life coaching so much, because oftentimes we are dealing with a lot of issues that's
Mm-hmm.
not allowing us to kind of move forward. Sometimes it's surface issues and sometimes it's not. A lot of times I deal with people that's having some occupational issues, meaning they have an issue with a supervisor, or they're trying to get promoted, or they're trying to move forward in a particular way in a relationship. And I kind of bring everybody together to sit down. Okay, what are these barriers? What do we need to look at? Let's start peeling this onion, these layers of onions behind.
So who is a good candidate for life coaching, or what does it? Is that a thing?
Yeah,
Is it for anybody, or is it a
yeah.
certain specific type of person that's a good candidate for it?
I think me personally, I think everybody is good for a life coach. I
Mm-hmm.
think everybody's good for counseling, and I think everybody is good for a psychiatrist if you need that. If you need that medical component
Mm-hmm.
that needs to be attached to that. And the reason why, because oftentimes we are constantly learning about ourselves. And
Okay.
sometimes we are conscious of it and sometimes we are not conscious of it. And so I personally make sure I go see a counselor or a life coach really every year. At least, I want to say for me, I usually go 3 months out of a year. I sit down, I talk about things, go over some things to try to figure out, okay, where I am, where I'm going, and do I need to make any modifications on my plans that I have constructed at the beginning of the year.
So in terms of, because sitting down with anybody and talking about their life can be stressful. And when
Mhm.
you're doing it as a career, you constantly seeing different people, sometimes a large group or a number of people in a row. How do you maintain your sanity outside of those 3 months that is more so keeping you in order? Like, is it a
Yeah.
ritual, or what do you
Mhm.
do to keep yourself from losing it yourself?
Yeah. So if someone comes, that's a good question. When someone comes to me, we always, oftentimes, most life coaches and psychologists, we have an action plan. So we sit down, we come up with an action plan. I call mine an
Mm-hmm.
action plan or wellness plan, actually. And if you go to a psychologist, they may call it a treatment plan, but we
Okay.
come up with this plan of action. And so once we complete our sections here, when you sign out for life coaching, I
Mm-hmm.
then follow up 30 days later, then I start following up quarterly. Now, they don't do that necessarily with the counselors or the psychiatrists
Mm-hmm.
per se, but for me, I like to just follow up because life happens, things happen. I like to call them triggers. Triggers happen. This thing that can get up under your skin that you're trying to manage, it happens. I even have my own triggers. And so when you
Mm-hmm.
have someone who is invested in you, that's going to follow up, then that's the type of person you want in your life, because more than likely he and she is going to get you back to your get you to your purpose.
Now, and this for me, I this is how I looked at life coaching. Normally, it's not really connected to uh, any trauma or anything of that nature. It's more so organizing your thoughts, getting
Mm-hmm.
you on a more professional,
Mm-hmm.
career-driven type of path. Whereas though
Mm-hmm.
counseling is more dealing with your internal in terms of maybe trauma or childhood or
Mm-hmm.
relationships outside of work or
Okay.
one-on-one, like personal relationships. I
Yeah.
didn't know if it was the same. Are you dealing with the same issues with the clients, or are you more so on their career path or life path uh,
Yeah,
space?
so I deal more with the life path. However,
Okay.
there is some overlapping. Let's be clear, because
Okay.
sometimes the barriers that they're dealing with, or the conflict or internal conflicts that they're having,
Mm-hmm.
have to do with stuff in the past.
It's
Although
tied back to something else.
mhm,
Okay.
I may not dive deep into that, but I will recommend that they would talk to someone more
Okay.
professional, as I am their life coach. But because I have a lot of experience with also providing clinical service, I am able to say, hey, this is what I'm seeing. I want to go ahead and refer you out. So that way that you have your life coach that's addressing that particular goal that you came to that life coach with, but you
Mm-hmm.
also have a counselor or a psychologist that can be addressing some of that trauma.
Does that make it difficult? Does that make the work as the life coach a little bit difficult if they're having some overlap in certain, like, if
Mhm.
they are constantly overspending or they're in deep debt, that's things that you help them get through, but
Mhm.
that may be connected to something
Yeah.
deeper. So
Hmm.
how did you, I mean, well, you just said you kind of choose to send them to somewhere else to get some of that
Hmm.
more wraparound service. Um,
Hmm.
as you grow in this, is that something that you want to also incorporate into your life coaching?
Hmm. Yeah. So in the future, my goal is to start providing clinical services at
Okay.
some point. That's a whole beast in itself because you got to make sure you have the proper credentials, and not just the credentials, you got to have the support and the
Okay.
money as well. But yeah, I can
What
see
Why
myself
money
doing that.
though? What's the
Huh?
money? What's the money aspect?
As far as how much it costs, or how much do I have to come out of pocket?
Yeah. So I mean, you said a financial. Is it financial on your end or on the
On my
client's
end,
end?
yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. Because then we start dealing with insurance companies, we start dealing with state laws, federal laws, you're
Okay.
dealing with Medicaid, Medicare possibly. And that's a whole, another world in itself that you have to be very aware and adaptive.
Okay. That was really my biggest thing, because I've been in myself career wise trying to figure out what are my 40s going to look like? What do I want them to look like?
Mhm.
And like my first experience with a therapist was not for me. I didn't do the selection process as carefully as I should have, because I didn't think that you pick a therapist like you pick a school or
Mhm.
your doctor. I didn't think of it in those terms, and I should have did my homework and not just been ready for therapy. I should have picked it because it really made me stay away from it a little bit um, more than I should have.
Okay.
How would you suggest people, on from your perspective now as a life coach? How do people select you or another life coach, or what parameters do you tell your clients or potential clients to look at when choosing a
So
life coach?
yeah, that's a good question. So for me, I always look at characteristics, right? And
Okay.
so um, I always say find someone that you can be comfortable with. And so it
Hmm.
may be the fact that he's a male. So you want to look at gender, you want to look at sexuality. So although I really cater to the LGBTQ community or same gender loving,
Okay.
but I'm also open to other genres because I was raised to be all loving and all accepting. But that's just my targeted population. And not only that, I've also lived that life. So you a little bit more connected, you approach it from an understanding and experience that oftentimes a heterosexual may not necessarily
Yeah.
approach that particular um, technique or certain tools that you may be aware of because you live the life. And we do research on ourselves all the time, right? So we
Hmm.
always come into things, whereas someone that may be heterosexual, those tools may not be as vast as the ones that I may necessarily have. So I always say look at the characteristics and the demographics. And so if those are a good fit, then you sit down and you just read a little bit about them. Then you just do like little consultations and see
Hmm.
if you connect. For me, energy is really big. I don't care what I do. If I have a personal trainer, if I have someone who's going to be doing my photography, whatever, it's always energy, energy, energy.
Right.
However, I run into a lot of people, it has to be spiritual. You have to be Christian. So even at the agency I work for right now, where I provide therapeutic services, often they've been getting a lot of requests for a Black male. So Black
Mm.
men are in demand right now with a lot of our clients.
That's it, and I can understand it, because, like, for me, in terms of a doctor, I've always preferred a woman doctor, because
Mhm.
sometimes you get a little bit more nurturing, where men
Right.
doctors can be a little short with you. And even
Mhm.
with my barbers, I prefer a woman barber, because they do a little bit more. They give you a
Yeah,
little
they
bit
do.
more treatment than just a straight lineup and send you out the door.
Yeah.
So definitely, when you're thinking about counseling, whether it be on the end of a life coach or a psychiatric do your homework, because you can always check for credentials, but in terms of, just the initial, like for me, that therapy session, the first therapy session, I was like, this not it. But I thought
Right.
this what therapy was. Like she was a Black woman, so I felt like I was about to be nurtured. But then she turned into a sister girl where I knew more about what she was going through than she knew about what I was going through. And that first sit down, she was in her way analyzing me and kind of putting me into, I guess I don't know what to call it, but she was doing her little assessment on me, but I should have been doing the same thing. And I stuck in there longer because I was ready for therapy. But now understanding like the difference in it, now I understand what to expect a little bit more, because often people don't. People try to get you to get life coaching services, but you don't really know what you're getting into,
Yeah. I mean, one of the things that I always do is like, what brought you here? Yeah, we're going to do that initial assessment, and we all should, because that's just the ethical thing to do. But what brought you in here? And oftentimes when you present that to them, and I don't know how your session started, but they start, pretty much just, projectile vomiting. It just stopped coming out. and I'm trying to keep up with them. And so, and when that started happening, then I try to really figure out where do we need to start, because oftentimes when you start really laying it out, you realize, again, that's that onion. It's so many layers to it. Yeah. And the more and more you talk, the more and more comes out, and you have to start pulling those layers back to get to the core.
It really makes a difference. And I didn't even think about specialty coaches and therapists and such that deal specifically with certain populations of people, or even, in terms of spirituality or sexual orientation or race. Like it makes a difference, because especially in the world we in today, you're not gonna feel, I'm not gonna feel as comfortable sitting down in front of a white man talking about my issues with society. I'm not going to think like that. Even if he's an ally or she's an ally, I'm just not in this space, because they already have in my opinion, have a built-in bias because of who they are naturally that they may not even understand. So, and I think that's what we get into trouble with when people talk about, especially with Black people, they not thinking that we feel pain. And we not realizing, well, why do you keep going to that same type of doctor if they not understanding that Black people have just as much of a tolerance for pain as any other race of people. But I think now, and that should be something that I think a lot of coaches and therapists need to, in terms of their marketing strategy, or just communicating with the public, getting us to understand. And I don't want to segregate the therapy population, but it really does matter who you're speaking to sometimes.
It does.
It really does.
It really does. And being able to connect, that's once you connect, that investment. And even when I sit down and I talk to, the people that are my clients, I don't like to call them clients. I literally like to just call them just kind of family.
Okay.
And the reason I do that, because they have to understand that this is we. Now, when I'm dealing with, my clients or patients, shall I say, when I'm dealing with the therapeutic side of it, I do not call them family. They're my patient.
Right, right.
And I say that even though I have the patients and I have, the Love Pursuit family, I always say you are not going through this by yourself.
Okay.
And so they have to understand that this is inclusive. And once you realize that the fight is together, we make this treatment plan together, we make this action plan together, we modify it together, and we all agree on it, then we both are held accountable for what needs to happen next.
Is that, so I'm gonna ask you this. Have you ever had to turn down one of your family members? Have you ever said, in terms of, I don't think this is gonna work, or I don't think you're ready?
Right. Yeah, so I'm very direct. Very, very direct, but respectful. And I'm going to give it to you, most of the times as raw as I need to. And it depends on the person in their situation, because it's case by case. You have to be very sensitive to certain people, emotions, and where they are in their life. Right. But if I know that you're not ready to do the work, then I'll let you know you're wasting your time. You're just not ready to do the work. And until you're ready to do the work, then you're just paying me just to come here and to repeat yourself and continue this vicious cycle. And I'm not going to let you do that. I'm going to bring it to your attention.
That's helpful, because some people would just let the person keep going, whether it be for financial reasons, or they just that person that just like to take on more than what they should be taking on in that moment. Right. How did this all culminate itself into you writing this book? Is this your first book?
Yeah, so this is my first book. And it's funny that you talk about the different types of therapists that's out there, because the book came about because I went through a divorce. And when I went through my divorce, I was really like depressed and stuff like that for a lot of different reasons. But in the midst of me going through that, I also just experienced racism and discrimination for the first time in my life. And I didn't know how to respond to that. I didn't know how to respond to a white man spitting in my face, telling me he's going to be after me and going to make sure my career is going to be ruined if he had anything to do with it. And it's what do you do? What do you say? And so I couldn't say anything.
Was that a client, or was that?
No, this was in my professional life. Yeah, okay. In my professional life. And so I could have said something, you know, the me that my mom raised wanted to really say something. But then in our workspace, we have the political side, right? And we have to make sure we follow their political views and protocols, because you'll find yourself unemployed. And I'm almost vested, so I didn't want to do that. So that just led to a whole lot of emotional stress and distress. And one day I was just sitting in the bed and I was crying and going through whatever I was going through. And I heard this voice say, "Be still." And I didn't know what that was. And it said it again. And I was like, is this what people talking about when they say they hear from God? Because I've never had a God experience that I knew of. So this is my first conscious God experience. And I did that. I was depressed. I took FML and took 3 months, and I just literally just laid there depressed and just listened and just waited. That's how all of this came about.
So the thought of so does this book mean more in terms of your experiences, or this the experiences that you've encountered from others? Is it kind of a mixture?
The book gives a lot of snapshots of my life and the different things that I went through. But I'm also coming from a cognitive behavior approach, right? Okay. And so we do better when we think better. Everything starts with a thought. And until you change how you think, your behavior and your actions they're just not going to change.
Because you won't even see it. You won't even see what to do next, because you're in that old mindset.
Right. And it's almost like a default.
Yeah.
So you've learned this and behaved and respond or reacted like this for so long. Trying to get yourself to see anything different is going to be foreign. It's going to be uncomfortable. It's not going to feel good. You know, your walk is going to change. Your talk is going to change. So I went through this whole process. And so in the book, I give my affirmations that I used in my personal life to help the next person. Then I give a little glimpse of my story. And towards the end, I give a reflection area so the reader can reflect on things that they need to do. So you literally get tools. So I'm not saying and trying to preach to you, telling you what you need to do and what you need to say, and not challenge you to change your behavior. Okay. So I give you the affirmation was supposed to help you change your thought. You kind of connect with my story, hopefully. That's me normalizing everything, right? Because in our community, we have to normalize some stuff because we always hiding behind closed doors. And so when somebody realizes that they going through stuff, or you going through the same thing they're going through, they'll be like, oh, okay. So it's not just me. Now I just don't leave you there. So once you have that changing of the thought, now you connected with me and we've normalized it. Now it's time for me to come and support you. I support you by providing those activities or those reflection pieces. Now it's up to you to do the work.
Okay.
But this book gives you all the tools that you need to help jumpstart your journey to wellness.
That in the book itself won't be out until February
6th, right?
February the 6th. So right now you're just doing tours and you're doing workshops in terms of just presenting the book to people. Is this book in a workshop form? I mean, a workbook form, or is it a read through and then you assess, what you got from it? How do you present the book to people in terms of how it can apply to their life?
So actually a little bit of both. So again, like I said, the first thing you do, you're gonna get the title, you're gonna get the affirmation. This is what you need to connect to. Then from there, again, you read the different stories. But the beautiful thing is that I'm not the only burgeoning soul in this book. I have 6 other burgeoning souls. So it's just not me who's gone through a lot of mess in life, a lot of
Okay.
trauma, a lot of hurt, a lot of disappointment. I found 6 other individuals who are entrepreneurs as well. So, and I tell people, if I can do it, they can do it, you can do it too.
Okay.
All
Okay.
right. And so, like you said, then it turns into like a workbook. When you have those reflections, I'll ask anywhere from 4 to 6 different questions to allow you to challenge your way of thinking, challenge the way that you walk and talk and act and react and respond to others.
Okay.
And at that point, you can take all of that information and you can apply it in your life.
I think it's really essential for, so I'm a professional artist.
Okay.
And maybe like 12 years ago, I decided to go for, I don't want to say go for broke, but go for fame and fortune and all that. And I wanted to really pursue my artistry on a professional level. At that point in life, I was kind of straddling the fence of, okay, this is what I do. This is who I am. This is my life, everything about it. But I got to pay the bills. I got to make sure it's food on the table. When you come to clients that are kind of in that fork in the road, what's the first thing that you tell them in terms of us trying to decide which way do we go? So what would be your advice for someone?
Usually the first thing I say is, what's priority to you? What's priority and what's secondary? And so when we're able to break down what's most important to you, then we know exactly how we need to move forward. But you'll realize most people don't even know what's important to them. So if I say, Nate, tell me the meaning of your name, and Nate is going to say,
the giver.
Okay, and that's good. The giver.
Looked it up the other day. So.
And so that's one of the chapters in my book. Most people I encounter, they don't even know the definition of their name.
Right.
And it doesn't have to be a formal definition from a particular tool that's or an assessment out there. You can give your own self a name.
A definition,
but until you know who you are and what you're supposed to do, you can't expect your boyfriend, your girlfriend, your lover, your boss. You can't expect them, not to cross you and for them to understand you more when you don't even understand the meaning of your name.
Yeah, that makes sense. I've never heard it said that way, but it makes perfect sense because until you, I like my name. I looked it up the other day. I've always known the definition, but it's a Hebrew version and there's a Dutch version of it. But and me knowing what my name has meant all these years, and it made me look it up again last week because I was like, maybe I've been just doing the wrong thing because I thought it meant this. But understanding, no, it's the same definition no matter where you look at. Understanding what your character is, what your habits are, because who you are is connected to the good and the bad of who you are. And you got to understand it so you don't fall into those pitfalls. But in terms of choosing and making a choice in your life, why is that so difficult for individuals to do? So in most cases, because some people can just make a decision and don't care and don't even turn back. But I think the majority of us, we're always balancing, is it, rent and homelessness. And I've always said, I'm not for that starving artist career. I want to have a roof over my head. I want to be able to put food on my table and clothes on my back. And I want to go to, my motto was always, I want to go to the market on Wednesday because it's Wednesday. Not because the check cleared, not because the gig paid off the day, but I want to be able to have freedom in my life that poverty does not often give you. But why is that so difficult? Why is choice or choosing so difficult for individuals in terms of our life?
Just a 4-letter word: fear. Fear is the biggest thing.
Right
Fear is the biggest thing that holds us back. More than not, I can believe it's still happening, but don't believe it's happening.
Right.
People really care a lot about what other people think. Like, it is huge.
Why?
And so because we give people in society so much power,
Yes, yes, yes,
um,
yes.
I don't know. Do you talk about politics on here a lot?
Go do
Okay, okay.
you,
And
sir.
I'm just going to
No
give you an
rules, no
example. So
boundaries.
right now, Republicans, right? They don't want to come out and just say what Donald Trump is doing wrong, right? Because they scared they're going to lose their job. And so what they're basically saying that they're living in fear because they're going to lose their position in the Senate. And if they do step out, it means that they're going to have to give up that particular job, but they're willing to sacrifice themselves, their soul. Okay. Now speaking of, and the whole country for a position.
Yeah. Or power.
Right. For power. And so until we learn how to stop walking and living in fear, we just going to, I call it self-harm. We're going to continue to self-harm. And it's no different than you literally getting a razor blade and cutting your wrist or slitting your throat. The only difference is that you're doing a slicing internally.
Yeah. And it's this. Have you noticed in your work right now during this pandemic? Have you seen a bigger push for your services? In terms of what to do next, or how do I fix this? Or a lot of people, myself included, I've been able to clean up a lot of stuff, not everything, not most of the stuff, but a lot of stuff from decisions that I didn't make or bad decisions that I made before during this time. Have you seen a bigger push in that, or to get things in order?
There has been an increase of my organization and also the organizations that I work for, services. There has been an increase, and I'm excited about it. Not necessarily excited about it because of what caused them to come, but just excited about it that they can actually just step out there and say, you know what, there's something that's going on that I'm not completely happy about, or I'm not sure what it is. I just need you to help me figure out like what's going on.
Is there I'm not gonna say typical, but is there a issue that comes up all the time, or with the majority of your the people you work with?
That is a good question. I think if anything, I'm dealing more with loneliness. Yeah, and especially among the elderly population, all of them. And in addition to a lot of the older, and I got to say older because I can't give you a specific age in the LGBT community, because you know the young folks look at you being old once you hit like 35, 40. They consider 25, you old.
Really? I saw being called oak at like 27. Like, come on, now, give me some time. Give me a little bit of time.
And there is a lot in the LGBT community. There's a lot of lonely people. They want to be in relationships. And they have gotten to the point that they have internalized that something is wrong with them. And they're trying to figure out what it is that they cannot, solidify a meaningful relationship. They are at the point, and I think it's fine, but I say they're at the point where they're okay if they're not in a romantic relationship, but if they just can have a consistent companion. It don't have to necessarily be intercourse. And the companionship will consist of holding hands, hugging, kissing. They're open to that, being in a sexless relationship.
But is that healthy though? Because that feels like you're trying to, I'm not wanting those things is a healthy need, but in terms of, it almost feels like, okay, I can't have what I really want, so I'm willing to settle for this. Does it, maybe I'm just looking at it from the outside, but does that get to an unhealthy space, or will that lead to unhealthy participation in, getting that hand held, but you got to deal with, a baby mama, or what's the breakup? Because for me, it's deal breakers for me. I'm not going to do anything for companionship. And that was my problem a minute ago, but I've learned how to balance that out. But does it get to a space of that's not healthy to simply settle for less just to get, touch, which we all need. That's a basic element of life, touch. But does it get to a healthy place?
Yeah. So I really despise
Unhealthy.
that word, settle for less. I cringe when I hear people say it, right?
Hmm.
And you know, and it's almost like a trendy term now, and it's nothing against you. And I'm saying that to
Right.
say this. Oftentimes people don't even know what they want,
Yeah.
you know,
Yeah.
and say they didn't paint it in their head that certain things are settled for less instead of exploring. So one of the things that my book talks about, stop putting these hard boundaries in place until you explore. If you haven't explored that particular thing, then don't create a hard boundary. And so I hear all the time when I talk to people, you know, they got to have all this superficial stuff where in
Hmm.
this materials, cars, got to have a nice paycheck, got to be making a certain amount, you know, you got to be this, you got to be that. And I sit back and I look at them, it's like, what do you really want? What do your internal wants?
You want a
You know,
blank?
then
You
when we
want a paycheck, or do you
right,
want a relationship?
right. And
Hmm.
so when we talk about loneliness, you know, then we start exploring what does that look like
Right.
in touch, you know, you, and this may sound crazy to you, just being able to smell someone's scent when they walk in the house or in the bed, like that does wonders for people. And they don't even really know that until we start doing some of these exercises. And they were like, oh, you know, they can identify that particular smell of the person that they really love and want to spend more time with. And so when you start talking about these
Yeah.
little things and you compare it to a house and this much of money and all of that, and you realize none of those things technically bring you happiness. You think you done told yourself it does, but
Yeah.
at the end of the day, what really
Mm.
matters to you. So it goes back to prioritizing when I say what's primary and what's secondary.
But and I guess that's just the language that I have. I'm
Mm-hmm.
not have, but that's just the phrase that's in my vocabulary.
Mm-hmm.
Settling for less, and I'm not saying any of those things are
Mm-hmm.
less in nature in general, but I am not willing. Me, this is Nate speaking. I'm
Mm-hmm.
not willing to have somebody in terms of a relationship just so I can have companionship or I don't
Mm-hmm.
feel alone. I'm not willing to sacrifice all the things that I want. And I don't have an expectation list. And I've tried not to have an expectation list. And how did this get on this? But
It's okay.
and even in my friendships, I don't have an expectation for people because me, in my definition of it, in order for me to have an expectation for you, that means I'm trying to control who you are, or I want you to be me. Versus letting people be who you are and then choosing what you don't want to deal with or not. Uh,
Right.
so that's
It's,
that's how I personally look at it. So when I say
yeah.
settle for less, that's what I mean. It's
And
just
and that's good, right? But what
mhm.
doesn't happen is that person that you may be getting to know may not know that. And
Oh,
so we
right.
have to be very careful with our words. Because when you say, oh, I'm not going to settle for less, and if you tell that to a particular person, then you just told that person you're less than, and he's less than whatever you have to offer. And
Right,
so
right,
we
right.
go back to the
And
conscious and the
that was my
subconscious.
mistake for a minute.
Right. Hmm. So we talking about the conscious and the unconscious. And what we
Mhm.
do oftentimes in our community, we say things and we send out negative affirmations and not positive affirmation. So
Right.
instead of saying, you know what, this is where I am in life, I don't think we would be a good fit because this is where I am and this is where I'm trying to achieve. But when we come out and say, well, I ain't gonna settle for less, but you just told that person that they're less than you or you're better than
Mhm.
them, and
Yeah.
you just created that division and separation, then you want to turn around and wonder why you're not in a relationship.
So this is why you do this, DB,
Yeah.
because you make sense of miscommunication. This is why
Yeah.
you're great at this. And I've been following a lot of your posts and such since I reached out to you. And that, I think we need more people that look like us giving
Mm-hmm.
us this message because Dr. Phil he doesn't do it for me. I love Iyanla like I love my grandmother, great grandma, and you need that nurturing. But sometimes it's things that I don't want to tell Iyanla, or
Yeah.
I wouldn't want to tell someone like that. So it's
Mm-hmm.
really important for people because you don't have to. You can be fake in front of them and
Yeah.
kind of omit things to fit the narrative. But when you're dealing with somebody that looks like you, that have similar experiences, it's really
Mm-hmm.
hard to really um, cut corners in that way,
Right.
or give them shorts, because they can call you out on it very easily. I'm in the process of writing a book of my own, and I am doing it with the help of an editor and a therapist. So I'm shrinking myself as I go through the process, so I know I'm purging completely. Like literally, I tape our communications and I send that to the editor so we can break down what's next and what this chapter is going to be, so on and so forth. And that only came because in me trying to do this by myself, I was omitting a lot of things that made me look bad. And I was like, that's not real. Who wants to write a book like that? Like, no, I wouldn't want to read that book, because you can almost tell when someone's writing that way. Like, you don't have no fault in this. Like, there's everything is about what somebody else has done.
Thank you.
So in terms of when you're dealing with entrepreneurs is I'll call myself, but dealing with entrepreneurs, how do you kind of categorize, okay, these are things that you emotionally need to get through, and these are steps that you need to take to get yourself financially, professionally, career-wise back on track or to move forward? What does that assessment look like? I'll ask you that so it's not such a broad question.
That assessment is just basically them telling me about them without second guessing it. And a couple of questions on my assessment. After they answer a couple of questions, I'll say to them, tell me how you really feel right now in this moment. Don't even think about it. And they just kind of spit it out. And you'll realize that oftentimes what they're feeling in that moment is attached to everything else that they're trying to do in life that they can't necessarily get past or get to. And I know in the Black community, we have not been taught to really express our feelings a lot. Even in my house, I mean, it was never said, don't express your feelings, but it was always get back up, or I don't want to see you cry, or, boys don't supposed to cry. No, just little stuff like that. Now me, man, emotionally, I'm just so wide open, and that's good and bad, because you have to find, a boundary everywhere. And sometimes I get so emotionally involved that I need to manage that a little bit better.
But okay, so I guess, so would you prefer someone go through therapy before they seek out your services, or does it matter? Or can they do them together?
It matters. So if you are dealing with molestation, rape, abuse, as a child, or, just really kind of taken advantage of in your upbringing, I would say, you know what? Yeah, go see, a psychologist. But the difference between me and a psychologist, financially looking at it from that perspective, if you have insurance, they're only going to cover so many visits, right?
Okay.
So oftentimes insurance will cover anywhere between 8 to 12 visits. So if you run out of visits, then you can always come to a life coach. However, I'm not going to continue the services that they probably have given you. But what I would be able to do is look at the tools that they gave you and incorporate those tools into what we're doing now and how you're trying to move forward in the future. And it's unfortunately that insurance companies put caps on, you trying to figure this stuff out, because it takes more than 8 sessions a year. It takes more than 12 sessions a year. Like, I know a buddy of mine who's been in therapy ever since he was like 25 years old. He see a therapist every day. That's the type of maintenance he needs in his life. And so mental health is real. I just say that mental health is real. And so I'm going to do my best to provide the service in which I'm able to address what needs to be addressed. Then when I feel like it's out of my scope, then I will refer them to someone else. And
we use that word mental health so much now, and I'm a big portion, a percentage of that is needed, because a lot more people are coming out of that closet and need that type of attention because of the past trauma, because of past or present issues that they may be going through. But I think many people look at mental health and automatically think schizophrenia or crazy or above, the norm line or below the norm. Like, so we never look at that phrase to be a cross section of everything, whether it be I'm having financial issues because I was never taught certain things, so it's getting out of hand, because we often look at the symptoms of what's wrong as the issue and not necessarily where it's coming from. So we normally see the extremes of what mental health can look like versus the everyday person that's going through a mental illness.
I am projecting that they're going to end up changing the term mental health, and you bring up a good point because of the stigma is attached to it.
Yeah.
But listen to, for all that's listen to me. All mental health is your physical body is imbalanced. Period. And since it's happening in the mind, they called it mental health. But it's really your body. At the end of the day, your body. So you have a chemical imbalance that's going on, and that's why you see a psychiatrist, because they'll give you some medication to make sure that chemical is balanced, so you're not responding and behaving in the way that is inappropriate. But really, at the end of the day, your body is just out of whack. You ever get up and you're like, oh, I just don't feel like myself today. There's an imbalance going on. Your stomach hurting, you have diarrhea, there's an imbalance going on. So look at it like that. It is the same concept. Your body's
but we
just out of
only
whack.
see it in like up here. We only see that being something up here. So I think once, and it, I think we don't need a new term. I don't think that's the last thing we need in this world is a new identifying term, because I think it further complicates things. But I think the stigma around those things needs to be adjusted, because now all I have to do is just create a new term, and that makes this portion of people feel a little bit better about themselves, which is helpful because it kind of broke down what those other words or terms meant to the greater good or greater world, if you will. But I really think, just especially for Black men, I took part in this program over the summer, and I just noticed Black men will come and get help, or we are often put in a situation where we're getting help once we're like too far gone in a certain situation, or we're already behind bars, or we're being released after 60 years in jail, or something extreme, or it's something being court ordered, if you will, or to get other services that they may need. They'll go through that platform. But I want to normalize, like I want it to be normalized. If it's anything I can do to help, but I think it needs to be normalized that we can express ourselves, just in general. Because whether you gay, straight, purple, whatever, Black men don't feel comfortable expressing themselves, because that means I look a certain way to this person sitting across from me, or they will think I am a certain thing, or whatever the thing is. So how do we normalize it for us, not for the outsiders, but for the people who actually need the help? How do you normalize it? Or how do you suggest we normalize it?
And a good question. I talk about this in the book. The perception is a weakness is perceived to be weak. A weakness does not mean that you're weak. A weakness just, to me, means an opportunity to be better.
Right.
And so, I give tips on what you can do and how can you move forward with that. But in essence, it goes back to just really spending time with the self. When you spend time with yourself, I even date myself. Like right now, I'm not in a relationship. I date myself.
You better go to that restaurant for one.
Look, at night, sometimes I make a warm cup of milk with some cinnamon in it, have my little hot milk so I can sleep well. But the purpose of doing that, it allows you to build your self-esteem. It allows you to build your confidence. It allows you to spend quality time with yourself. I also meditate. You can call it meditation, prayer, chant is all the same thing to me. Build your relationship not only with you, but your higher source. When you are comfortable and confident in your skin, you confident with the fat rolls, you confident when having a no booty, a flat booty, thick thighs, curved. There's nothing anyone on the outside world are going to be able to tell you about you because you know you. And so with that said, we have to spend more time with ourselves and less times with our friends, going to the club, drinking. All that time you investing in making those balls rich, you need to think about your life and your you know, your wellness and your exploration. Spend that time in yourself.
I just as we get to tune into church now in this new world, the sermon that the church I go to, or the pastor that I listen to rather, she spoke about dividing our attention and how if we are too much in one of those categories, obviously something's being blocked. Obviously something is not of quality in the other two. So giving your God/spiritual self enough attention, giving yourself enough attention, giving others enough attention. And sometimes you have to take a little bit from this one to balance this one out. And there's no such thing as perfect balance, but go and try to do it as much as you can. And sometimes it'll be a little, it's work in doing that. But once you get in the habit of, you know, okay, I got to take my time for me. I got to take my time for my spirituality, my God, my religion, and I got to take a little time for everybody else that's in my life. And given that, you'll find yourself feeling a little bit better. One of the things that I noticed during this pandemic, people don't like being by themselves. It's really difficult for them to spend a moment by themselves. We so much so that we're putting ourselves in health danger. Being around people who just 10 months ago we couldn't stand, but for some reason we just feel the need to be. For the last 10 years we've been talking about how Thanksgiving is the most evil holiday ever and how the holidays are so paganistic, but everybody is making plans now for Thanksgiving because I guess they've been apart for so long, or they can't stand being by themselves. Can you address that need to be with people and not feeling comfortable by yourself or spending time alone?
Let me tell you why people are doing that. They're not ready to sit in their mess. They'll go up there and they'll make the mess, but they don't want to sit in the mess that they made. So they'll dump all their bottles, their wrappers, all their trash in a lake. But when it's time to go swimming, they're gonna go to somebody else's lake that's clean and not swim in their own lake. And that's what I mean by spending time with the self. 70% of my time is spent with myself to develop my soul. 20% of my time is spent with my family. Other 10% goes to everybody else.
My friend Shar says, make sure you slice up some ginger and honey with that milk and cinnamon. But
look, it's funny. That's funny she said, because I just got through drinking on some ginger honey and some medicinal tea.
She said, just put that in there with that milk and cinnamon. But part of me, I've been going crazy through this because I'm used to working. You know, in the morning time, I'm at the school, and then I have whatever gigs in between that, and then I'm at the station and rehearsals at the end. So I'm used to being out of the house 6:30 to after midnight. So this time indoors is driving me crazy. It's not necessarily that I want to be around people. I felt that need and that urge to do that. But at the same time, I know people who have not been in the house throughout this whole pandemic. They have found something to do every moment of the day. And that idea of facing yourself, that quiet time forces you to think out loud.
Yes.
And you feel your motives. And I've gone through this. And it's things that I've had to deal with in this mode that I would not necessarily have given time or attention to before this.
Yeah.
So is that so difficult for people to be, and not judging anybody, but
it's difficult. Listen, I was in 2001, I was hit by a drunk driver.
Oh wow.
And let me tell you, I didn't had 1, 2, 3. I had 3 surgeries. Still They were thinking about amputating my legs if
Oh,
the neck surgery didn't work. And I'm saying all this to say that I
won't he
was,
do it? Won't he do it? Won't he do
yeah,
it?
and I run marathons to this day.
Oh,
But
wow.
I'm saying that to say I was forced to be immobile. I was forced to deal with all that junk that I did, all
Mm,
that junk, all of the hurt. And you know how you in a relationship and you know somebody ain't doing right,
mm,
but you still, because you're long suffering like me, you still kind of stay in it, and you see the potential in them, and you want to, see what you can do
mm.
to kind of make it right, knowing you
Mr.
can't. Like
Fix It, Mr.
yeah,
Fix It.
you start dealing with all of this stuff. You start questioning
Mm-hmm.
who you are, what you are, why you are the way that you are. And that was the longest 6 months of my life, to be in a wheelchair, can't go nowhere, can't do anything. I had to
Mm,
work out some things. And it's very hard. And you have to remember that people look for validation and confirmation for other human beings.
mm,
And when they're not being validated or confirmed, which I don't think any human being should confirm you, but when they're missing that, then they're lost.
right,
It's a
right,
part of their
right.
existence. And so
It's
you got to be a powerful individual to sit there, to be able to affirm yourself, right? Then
uh-huh.
get confirmations here and there from human beings, but be able to sit in your mess and allow your higher source, which is mine, is God, to confirm if you're doing good or if you're doing bad. Who wants to sit there and get reprimanded by God?
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah. It I think this pandemic, one is gonna go on longer than what we think, but two, it is going to totally change who many of us are, who
Mhm.
many of us pretend to be, who many of us want to be. Uh, and it's going to be a lot of people. It's going to be a big gap, bigger than what it was just 8.5 months ago between people. And it's a lot of us have wasted time throughout this. And for whatever reason, whether we just didn't address the issues, whether we didn't paint that room that we've been wanting to paint, or whatever the issue, or speak out to that family member or in that relationship, we've wasted time through this. But I've seen people thrive in ways that it's been difficult for them to thrive prior to this, because a lot of them took this time to like just do what it is that they've always wanted to do versus what they've had to do for bills and things like that. And it's really it's astounding looking at people thrive in the midst of all of this crazy we've been through in the last almost year now. So in terms of people starting new businesses,
Mhm.
people, going hard with hobbies that they had, or expanding and jumping and moving and doing things that they would be so stifled from. And a lot of us have had a little boost. A lot of people who got financial aid got that little boost, but you saw people do, for the most part, do the right thing in this moment and just try harder. um,
Mhm.
when you have this type of growth going on, what are some of the things or the warnings that you give to some of your clients, not to stifle them, but to
Mhm.
say, hey, you know this is a pendulum, life is a pendulum also, so you up here right now, so I need you to prepare for what's when that swing back happens.
Boy, you better preach. I like that you
I've
said
been doing the
something that
work. I've
stands
been doing the
out.
work.
Prepare,
Hmm.
prepare, prepare. That means so, so much, and it'll go a long way. And I
Hmm.
always tell my clients, have a plan A, a plan B, and a plan C. Always be prepared. And I just can't harp on that enough. But
Right.
I would tell everybody that's listening, there is a shift in the atmosphere, a shift that's happening.
Hmm. Hmm.
It is your time. If you want to do something right now, now is your time. But make sure during this time is transformational and not transactional. And you may say, DB, what does
Mm,
that mean?
mm,
Do not go to networking meetings to network. You go to networking meetings to transform, to build partnerships, to build relationship. That networking stuff
yeah, yeah,
is one-sided,
yeah.
and I guarantee
it's temporary.
Yeah, that's the word I was getting ready to use. It's temporary. It's no longevity in it. And so if you're not in the business of relationship building, then you're going to miss out on your blessing. You're going to miss out on your opportunity.
And that's one of the things that's even probably how I met you or came into contact with you, because I said to myself, I've always been the artsy person in my family and friend circles, but I still was very, okay, I want a roof over my head. I want clothes on my back. I want to be able to go to the market on Wednesday. So it was still a little part of me that was still stuck. My toe was still in that 9-to-5 world and mindset, not even in the world, but the thought process of somebody in it. But I've realized in this, do things that make you uncomfortable. Before we got on this, I had went to the art supply store to get some stuff to make some things. And I was in the middle of the store and I said, Nate, what if you were that person, that person that just walks into every situation and just makes friends and, start talking to the people that work at a place and become that person. And I said, what if you try to do that right now? Like, just do that. So every time somebody would walk past, I would spark up a conversation, and I could tell how jarring it was to the people who work in this art store, because the art store is just a few steps from my home. So I've gone there all the time, and they're not used to that, Nate. Just try that, even if it's not something you do every day. Yeah. And it was fulfilling. It was a lot of energy, and that's probably why I don't do it all the time, but there's a lot of energy that had to happen in order to keep that momentum going. But the next time I go in there, they're going to react to me differently.
Right.
Those people are going to react, which is going to force me to be like, okay, how you doing today? What's going on with you? How's your baby? Yeah. And it just that one little step, that thought that was like, Nate, won't you? And I don't even know where that thought came from. I couldn't even tell you, like, that's something I've been thinking about before, because it wasn't. But I was saying, well, what if you just step outside of your character, quote unquote, your character, and do something that scares you, that you've never done before, and just meeting people and just, doing something that you can't, imagine doing. That's what got me to We Are You Radio. Like, I just reached back out to the owner, and you don't know what things will, and that just started as a general interview, and then you meet people and like yourself in accordance with that, and you just don't know what things will happen. But I've seen a lot of people jumping out there, people who didn't have a business bone in their body and now got a t-shirt business or a restaurant. I've seen so many restaurants pop up right now. It's crazy. But it's what I think our culture needed. We just needed just a little push, just a little moment where we ain't working ourselves to the grave to flourish and to thrive.
Right. And that's just what happened. So one of the things that I'm just excited about is that we're taking some of this money from the 1%, right? So we're trying to
some of our money back from the 1%.
For that too. So it's like, that's exciting, right? In addition to that, our community oftentimes are working 2 and 3 jobs.
Right.
And so we don't have the time to be creative, to invest in our own creativity. And we are creative beings. I mean, if you just think about some of the things that Black people have done and have invented, you'll be like, wow. And understanding that our heritage and our history and our generation come from a long bloodline of entrepreneurs. I mean, we have entrepreneurship in our spirits, period. And so, again, it goes back to knowing who you are, knowing your name, and spending that quality time with you, and just digging and looking back on pictures for you to understand where you are and your capabilities. Because we are working, oftentimes we are working for companies, and you know what we're doing? We're selling our creativity for them for $40,000 a year. Oh, what's your idea on this? How you think we should proceed? You giving them, the big business, your plan of action, and they paying you $40,000 a year.
I work for a company that puts me in schools, and I teach art, theater, public speaking. And that's been my life for a number of years now. And it was crazy because I just was emptying out some emails, and I came across my email that they send out every year with our contract in it, and we digitally sign it. And I said, let me just read this contract. And I go through the contract, and in that contract, I basically sold them or gave them my creativity, because I didn't get the money for specifically that, but it was clauses in it that says anything that you create, innovate, start, or create a process for belongs to us.
Yep, they own the rights.
So me sending in my lesson plans every week and creating these images and all this stuff that I was sending them so they can promote on their website or to, potential sponsors and such. I was giving them all of me. And there was no clause that says we would share the rights to, or this is our percent. It belongs to us. Mm-hmm. So if I created this new way of communicating, and it was often things that I did that were for the first time for that company in terms of how I was teaching my preschoolers, I'm saying like that belongs to them now. I just gave them that. They can use that for future teachers, for future classrooms, for future grants, and I don't get any percent of that. And that made me read the whole contract. And I would never sign that contract after reading it. Never. Even if I go back to them once this is all over, if I go back, I'm never signing that contract ever again. I'm going to send them my contract. Exactly. And if they don't like that, then that's it. But it's not enough.
You have to think.
But how do you get entrepreneurs specifically? Because that's probably what you work with a lot more so. Yeah. How do you get them to take themselves that seriously when it comes to, even if they're working, like right now, me working for someone else, that's a benefactor to me now. It's no longer a job, it's a benefactor. And the moment that benefactor, it doesn't work out, I'm gone. Let me go and interview the next benefactor. But how do you get individuals to take themselves that seriously?
Again, it just goes back to understanding the self and finding their worth. Okay. When you know who you are, man, there is no stopping. And I would read different books and different blogs about learning who you are and knowing yourself and your worth. Right. And then on a therapeutic level, we have things that we teach, and we have different techniques we use to get them to understand and love themselves a little bit more. Mm-hmm. But when you arrive, that's when we start taking the same approach that you have. We look at the job as being a means of paying your rent, and not necessarily being a means of your longevity. Because back in the day, that's how we was raised. I remember my grandmother saying when I was switching jobs when I first moved to Atlanta, you need to get on the job and stay on the job. That's because she was at Bell South for literally 30 years and she retired. Yeah. So everything was devoted and invested in Bell South, and she did get her retirement. But companies are not that loyal anymore.
But when she retired, somebody else is doing that job now. Yeah, it's probably been a cycle of people that's been through there that probably wasn't even as faithful as she was. That's doing that job right now. Is Bell South even still existing?
No, it's AT&T now. But
somebody else is doing that job right now.
I'm gonna tell you, if y'all don't already know, which you probably already do know, your job can care two craps load about your behind. Most jobs, unless you're working with a small business, and they are able to convey that type of affection and affinity for you and your work. But these big corporations, they're there for their bottom line to make sure they get their numbers. And so when you give them, you give them the bare minimum, and you take that leftover energy and you bring that leftover energy to what it is that you truly want to do.
And see, I have been doing that for years and didn't realize that was what I was doing, because often my job would pay for my, everyday expenses, but I would take whatever was left over and put that into my art or to me being a performer and buying, makeup or whatever I needed to be an actor, and just trying to fill that void in that space. And I didn't realize that's what I was doing. And the moment I start realizing, I need a benefit for working here beyond dental or vision or whatever. I need a benefit for working here, because that's a given. That's what you should give us for giving our time. But I realized, and it helped me not to stay at jobs longer than I should be. But honestly, I didn't get that until I was probably 30 or over 30. So I'm in my 30s now, and I can say in the last like 7 years or so, I've gotten that lesson. But I pray, and that's why I work so much with young adults, because you have to get that early. Because the later you get it, it's never too late, but the later you get it, the harder it is to change the habit of being in that mindset of a 9-to-5 employee. And there's nothing wrong with doing that, but just always have your own separate mission statement in mind.
Yeah.
This is a means not to an end, but to my next level, my next step. So that's just me doing the work. That's what I've gotten from this.
That's good. That's good. And you may want to work for that particular company for the rest of your life, right?
Mm-hmm.
If that's what you want to do as far as your occupation or your vocational work. But also understand that you need to be preparing and feeding your soul's development. Yeah. And so your job in these corporations, they don't care nothing about your soul development.
Mm-hmm,
right?
Mm-hmm,
and so once you're able to develop your soul, then you begin to walk in your purpose. And most of us don't know what our purpose is. I just found out what my purpose was when I went through that whole thing. I told you I was depressed. That's how I found out my purpose. But I was working so much, I thought my purpose was just to go out there and make money. I don't know about you, but I can remember as a little boy, they say, baby, go to school, you get a good job. Pay your bills, pay your taxes, and that was my goal. I didn't. And
you can be in your passion and not understand that.
Yeah.
You can be in your career, your line of work, your passion, your own business, and still not know.
Right, because passion is different from purpose. Yeah. Passion is what fuels the purpose. Passion is what fuels the action. Yeah. You can be passionate. I haven't been passionate in all the relationships, but that outcome was the outcome that I wanted. It was a completely different outcome. It wasn't aligned with my purpose. So you have to understand what that purpose is, or you're going to be forever passionately lost.
Yeah.
And it's going to be an emotional roller coaster. So everything that you do with intention and attention. Right. And I cover that in the book too. When you do it with intention, again, we would have thought, I intend to do this. When you do it with attention, then it's the action that's nurturing the intention.
So we are running out of time.
Okay.
I want a part B to this because your book is coming out and you're doing your rounds right now in terms of advertising and marketing. So tell people where we can get you at, where we can find you at. At the bottom of the screen, his IG is on the screen already, but where can we find you at to communicate, or if we want to host a workshop for you or send you some food stamps or whatever it may be.
Make sure they're the paper food stamps too. I like but you can find me Loves Pursuit ATL. That's LOVES Pursuit PURSUITATL. You can use that to find me on Facebook, Twitter, Instagram, and lovespursuitATL.com. That's my website.
Okay. So we're going to get him back on here because we're going to go and dissect the book and tell us again, when does the book come out and where could it be purchased at, or are we there yet?
So the book can be purchased on my website. You can go to Facebook, you can purchase it there. Right now we have a $35 special startup kit, and that includes the book, an affirmation bookmark, and also a chakra bracelet to help you with intention. So we give you a little kit to just jumpstart, but it releases on February 6th, 2021. That's a Saturday. Okay.
So you can get that kit on your website.
Yeah.
Okay. Yep. So I appreciate you, sir. And I'm going to ask you my final question, and we're going to get out here, get some dinner, all that jazz. But what question would you ask to your 100-year-old self, and what advice would you give to your 17-year-old self?
What question I would ask my 100-year-old self is probably, where do you go from here? Yeah, where do you go from here? Because my goal is to live to be 125. That's my goal. Is I already put it out there.
I've been getting a lot of responses lately in that avenue. Everybody want to be over 100 and pushing. But I get you. Mine is 113 or 112 in a day. My great grandmother was 112. So I wanna get that at least by a day.
That's your competitive nature. Now, what was your second question? Because I didn't forget.
What advice would you give to your 17-year-old self?
Man, don't be concerned that you are not built like the average Black person. You're tall, you're lean, you have a European body. No, you're not curvy or voluptuous. And your booty is probably the size of a grape. It is okay. You are still attractive and handsome. And although FUBU, Sean John, Rockaway fall off your body and swallow you up, they're gonna soon make what you call slim fit, and you're gonna be dapper. You're gonna be look good in that slim fit.
And this man lives in the middle of ATL, and he's talking about slim fit. So I'm gonna have to show you some restaurants to go to there that I know about, so we can work on that. But I appreciate you, sir, for coming through, and nice to meet you.
Likewise.
But anything that I can do to help you further push it, just let me know, reach out. And I definitely want to bring you back on when it's closer to your book launching, so we can kind of do a talk back. And I'm gonna get that kit as well, so we can vibe on what the book is and how we can help people. How I can help you help other people.
Thank you.
So I appreciate you, sir. Everybody's listening. Don't forget the Artist Exchange comes on every Monday and Friday at 5 p.m. Don't forget, my mind just went blank again. Binge-worthy podcast, a new episode drops tomorrow. We are reviewing videos, film, TV, television, all those things, and connecting it to our spiritual, our social, our economical, our historical selves. So tune into that tomorrow, and every Tuesday, a new episode. Happy Thanksgiving, because I'm not going to see you until next Monday. Get as much turkey as you can get, but be safe, be sensible, small groups. Please be safe so we can see each other in the new year and next Thanksgiving. So again, thank you, sir. You can tune into his show also on WERU Radio.com every Wednesday.
Every Wednesday morning, 7 to 8 a.m.
There you go. You can get it on the app, Where Are You Radio app. So thank you again. Peace out, sir. Appreciate you.
Thank you.
The
Have
next show up is what's the next show, Monty? I just forgot that quick.
It's time to cook something with Hilarious Omar.
There we go. His second show, he did great his first go around. So check him out and get some laughs. You will definitely laugh. You will learn some things and all that junk. So peace out, people. Keep staying.